Hey everybody, it's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I wanted to share an idea that I use from time to time in my personal journaling and page making, and I've never really shared this, but an acronym, G.R.E.A.T, G-R-E-A-T, is something that I use to build art journal pages or junk journal pages, and it seems to me like it comes out great every time. It's very easy to follow the steps. This is watercolor paper. Look at my fingers. I've been out here playing all day. You can use mixed media paper. You can really use any kind of paper, but for art journaling, it's nice to have something heavy enough to hold up to different media and to be able to soak in water like watercolor, and also to just be a page. Like if you decide to create a journal that is going to have like the rings, you're going to use ring, what do you call those things? Book rings. Book rings. If you're going to use that, or if you're going to sew the pages in, it's just nice to have a page that is sturdy enough that it can hold up to certain things. These pages are 12 inches across, so I'm going to mark right at 6 inches, and then I'm just going to put the ruler down and we're going to tear right down that 6-inch mark. Got to really hold the paper down because it is heavy, and pushing against that ruler, the ruler will slide and it won't be even, but that's okay too. The rough edges are going to be on the outside. These are a couple of pages that I've already done. They each took just a few minutes. I had them behind me on the floor drying. You can see the acrylic paint on this one is still a little bit wet. These are going to be awesome. I still want to put some art on the other side, but for now, this is what I have. They're drying, and let me show you how I did this. This is a process that will help you also if you have an artist block or a mental block, creative block, or if you're a beginner and you think, well, how do people get these layered pages? This is not perfect, but it will get you started and you will have a foundation, and then you can go back and add all of the little fancy things that you start to develop interest in or skills for or however. So G is what I consider the ground floor, and it's either going to be a paper or a color. And what I've been doing this morning is using a lot of pinks. And you can see on the palette here, there are different colors. I don't care if they touch a little bit. I don't care if those little hard pieces end up in there necessarily, but let's pick those up. So the ground floor for this one is going to be this bright pink paint. And you can see already there's some black on here that's gotten onto the brayer. I am okay with that. And let's try to get some of this off of here. Let's go ahead and do another page in this. Maybe we can pick up some white in this one. In fact, let's just add a little white. And I don't want this to be too thick. We want it to dry quickly. You know, the more moisture you have on your page, the longer it's going to be before you can actually really use it or move on to the next step. Now, you know what? That looks like bubble gum that's been out on the road or something and has tar mixed into it. It's okay though. Let's just go with this. So that is the ground floor. This is the color that we're going with, and that's going to be sort of the ground level of this sheet that we're making. To me, the R stands for repeat. So pick a pattern, something that you can do on the page, and repeat it over and over again. I have a box of things that I call shape makers. I have these circles. I have, you know, this hollow thing that you can run through a color and add circles like this. So just go all over the page and repeat a pattern. Pick up some of those other colors. Put it everywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be a shape maker. Another way that you can repeat a pattern is to take a stencil, and let's just use, this is one I've kind of been enchanted with lately. We're just going to lay that stencil down, and I'm going to let's pick a different color paint. I know this is another pink, but let's just go with it. So let's get some of this pink, and this is a really thick one too. So I'm going to run the brayer back and forth. So let's just go over this stencil on top of the page. get in all those little spots. And then let's pick this up and just flip it over. Maybe get that place there. So the pink paint that's on the other side of that is going to stick to the page. So let's put in a little more white this time to go over the top right here. And again, fill in all of that space. And pull that back. So you end up with this really textured page. I think that's very pretty. What I might do, and I'm okay if we mess up this page a tiny bit, I'm going to go ahead and clean my brayer off on the back of that. Maybe get even some of those black paint that ended up on the edge. Okay, so let's turn those over. So we've got G for the ground floor or the ground level of our page. And we've got R for repeat a pattern. And then E is for ephemera. So this is a place where I take a piece of ephemera. It doesn't necessarily have to be truly legitimate old ephemera. I do like that because it's typically thinner. You can, easily tear out a shape and glue it to the page. But it could also be something modern. It could be just a piece of scrapbook paper. But you want something to add another layer of interest. And I just kind of grabbed something at random. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. I'm going to put some glue on the back here. And because this is a really thin paper, I am going to be careful and spread this out so that I don't have ridges underneath here. So this is our ephemera layer. And I'm just going to glue that down. Maybe try to get it so we don't have any wrinkles anywhere. Not going to be picky. I just put it right in the middle of the page. And for this one, for the ephemera, why don't we pick something a little different? Okay, instead of a piece of traditional ephemera, something old, let's actually tear out a piece of scrapbook paper. I don't want it to cover the whole page because I really like that background. I'm going to try to tear it so that the white edges are on the back side. You can tear it a certain way, so if you pull this part down, that white edge is not going to show up like it would if you pull in the other direction. Maybe this seems like it clashes. I don't know, but the point of using this is to show you that you can use anything. I started to grab something that's all pink and just fit right in, but let's go with some contrast. And I guess I will be somewhat good and spread this out a little bit. Maybe, I think I might put it down here a little bit. So that is the E ephemera part of each page. The A for me is art. And at this point, I do mean to add your own touch with something. Whether it is taking a pencil, like on this one, why don't we take a Sharpie and just make some shapes? We'll do X's and then maybe do some dots. I'm going really fast here. This is not anything fancy. Some of you are probably saying, "Ooh, you could have done something better than that." Well, I could have. You can add all sorts of things. If you do faces, this is where you might take an ink pen that you like and do some sort of face in the background, something that's not too dark, just something that's going to show up. So just add your touch, or maybe it's a word. Maybe you want to say, and let's pick something different this time. Maybe a pink Sharpie and write, "Be yourself." And we can make her lips pink. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. For this one might seem a little bit harder, and in a way it kind of is, because you do have this really dark paper, and it's not going to be so easy to write something on top. But you could come back. I mean, art is something that you're adding yourself. You could come back with some thin paint that's going to dry quickly and just put some marks with that. And while that is drying, so that, you know, that's our art. You could even, well, I think most of my gel pens are kind of, they're not doing so great. But if you have like the, what are these called? The white jelly rolls or whatever, you know, you could write the word art. So let's let that dry a little bit. I think I do want to come back and just make her face a little better. We went so fast. She deserves more. She really does. Let's work her out. And then the last part, we're just going to say this is sufficient for the art. The last part of this is texture. So you can take, there's so many different things you can use. You could take a leaf and flower petals. That is something that's textured. You could sew it in place. You can bring your stapler in and just staple that texture in place. On the other one, I have a piece of fabric that, because it has so much in it, it might tie these two contrasting colors or pages together. So I'm just going to cut a piece of fabric off of here. Let's cut that down some, and we're going to put plenty of glue on the back because, as you can see, it's, oh wait, okay, that's the right side. But that side's kind of neat. I like the way that blue ties in. You know what? I'm going to glue the wrong side up, or glue the right side down. Is probably a better way to say it. Got a lot of glue on there, and we're just going to turn that over, put it right here. So great journal pages. The journal part is to add a place where you can actually journal. On this one, I have a pocket where you can slip a little note in. On this one, I don't have anything yet, although you could write with a Sharpie right down here. You can glue something onto here if you desire that. But that is the next step in the process, whether you put this into a book. These pages are ready for additional journaling or additional art. And even though these are really fast and they're nothing spectacular, you can come back and add to these. I just truly think that this formula gives you like an artistic block breaker. To me, it helps me get out of a slump if I'm in one and just start using materials. And, you know, you can come back and add whatever you want to at this point. The pages we've worked on already are pretty much dry at this point. We've got a little bit of color on the backs of these. Actually, that one's pretty much ready to go. I could add more to that. I need to do this one. This one's ready to go. And I went ahead and put some color on a whole sheet and then tore it apart. So we've done the G on this, which is the ground floor, as I call it. And the next part is the repeating pattern. And I think for this, I'm going to use one of my Dollar Tree stencils that's got the, this is sort of a paisley design. Maybe I can manage somehow to pull off using the brayer with this. I'm kind of a messy creator. That's okay. I'm a messy journal maker. hear someone outside calling the chickens. So let's see if we can get some color down in that stencil. And again, I'm trying to make it a thin enough layer that that it doesn't take forever to dry. Looks like it went under the stencil a little bit. That's pretty though. I like that. I'm okay. I'm really okay with that sort of messy look that we got there. And you see I've dragged some paint across here. Let me go ahead and brush these off a little bit. Ooh, I'm always happy with this square. I like this. And that is a piece of, you know, something else that you can do. Well, let's see. Could just lay that down in the paint. Let's see if it picks up enough. Not really, not as much as I want. So let's really cover it a little better. This is actually a piece of that padding that you can lay down under a rug to keep it from slipping. And things like this are great for making texture. So there is a repeating pattern. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the paint off of this. We'll just add this to the ground level layer there. We'll do something with this, but not gonna put that on the other page. Not gonna do that like I did the last one. So the ground level, the repeating pattern. Oh, look at this tiny, adorable little picture. That to me is art. Just that by itself. Let's go ahead and add the ephemera portion of this page. That's going to be part of an art journal. Let's put it right in the center. That's fun. And wondering what would work. Oh my gosh, so this is some beautiful paper that I have. Why don't we put a piece of this down? And it doesn't have to be just a huge piece. We really are just trying to make a layered page that we can add to. That's pretty. One of the things about this this process, if you decide you want to skip a step, you definitely can. It's just, to me, it's a great way, again, to get rid of any kind of creative block. It's a way to use up materials. It's a way to go ahead and build a stash of layered pages. I sure didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. Let's put that over there. And because I ended up getting glue across here, we might put this one right in the center like that. And then we will add, you know, it'll all come together. I like to think that there aren't any mistakes in art journaling and junk journaling. It's just, if you can add another layer, you can go over it with something else. You might end up with a really pretty accident, something that you like. Just no mistakes. Be free and create. So we've got 2 more pages. So that's the ephemera layer. And then for the art layer, I don't want to really do anything to take away from the simplicity of that picture being right there in the center, but I'm sure that we can come up with something. After looking at this one for a little bit and just giving it a little bit of thought, I think we're going to go back again with some of this, the Lucas Krill Studio. That's something I bought recently for 50 cents at the thrift store at the Scrap Exchange. And let's get kind of a small brush. And maybe we'll just make, I got some water on there. I don't want that to be too wet. Just do a little freehand flower. Can be really simple. dry the brush off really good, and just add a little white right on top. And once things dry, then you can come back with your art pens. You can add more doodles and things. So let's just make a little stem there, a couple of leaves. So that's the art portion of that. And for this one's still kind of wet. I really like using Sharpies. I don't want to put this in wet paint. I'm trying to stay in areas where... So I just did what looks like maybe some stitches, but it's just ink, of course. Definitely still wet over there, so I won't get in that area. And you could just do some little shapes. That curly Q shape is a lot of fun. And I love the gold in this one. And again, you could feel free to skip any step that you want to skip. So the last part is the T for texture. It could be, you know, actual texture, like texture paste. That's cool. So maybe we'll add a little more up here in the corner. It's a lot of fun to collect things like this that you can use for making patterns and shapes on your pages. That's pretty. And we might add some color to that somehow. What happens if you go across that with some paint? I love this color. Got some white in this. Picked up some white that time. So there's 2 more pages for the journal. And I think what I'm going to do is stop and do the other sides and then come back and show you what I've got. I just wanted to drop in and show you that for this repeating pattern, I decided to press the paper to the palette to soak up the rest of what is there, and I'm considering that my repeating pattern. So the G part of my formula was pink for the ground level, and then the repeating pattern is just blobs of paint from the palette so that we don't waste anything. How's that? I finished up these pages. I did take a break. Jason and I had to go take care of an errand. I did a few other things, and then I came back and finished this up. But this was all done in one day, and it was all done in just a couple of hours. It was a lot of fun to sit down and put this together. I ended up going ahead and putting it on the metal book rings so that I would have a completed art journal to show you. And I want to share again the formula that I use sometimes to put together a page, especially if I have a mental block, creative block. I use the acronym G.R.E.A.T to make a great page, and G is for the ground level of the page, which is adding a color or just an entire piece of paper that you want to work with, whether it's colored paper or a patterned paper. The R stands for a repeating pattern. In this case, you can see that it's the butterfly stamp. In this case, you can see that it was some bubble wrap used to put a pattern down. Here I used this grid that comes from a material that keeps your rug from sliding around. Here it was another stencil. So that's G.R. E is for ephemera. An ephemera can be an old piece of ephemera, legitimate ephemera, or it can be any type of paper, a page of a book, a map piece, For instance, this is a map piece. This is a book page. We have a little piece of paper from a book that had designs in it. The ephemera on this page is a strip of scrapbook paper that I felt like had the circles to complement the pattern made from the bubble wrap. So the E is for ephemera. The A is for art, and the art can be simply taking out a pen or a pencil, making marks on the page, actually drawing a face, painting patterns. Like here, I used a paintbrush. So actually, let me back up. I used what I normally use to spread my glue, which is one of these foam sticks or whatever, to make triangular shapes. And then I came back and put that pretty green paint in the middle. You can tell that the palette has a lot of colors that I used throughout this whole project. And one of the fun things about sort of being messy and laid back and putting together a page with these steps, it ends up sort of flowing together. And how many pages? This is 6 pages, I think. So we have the ground level, which is the color or the paper. R is for a repeating pattern. E is for a piece of ephemera or paper, some type of ephemera. A is for adding art to the page. And then T, the last step, is texture. And just going back to the beginning, the very first page, the texture on this is the flower petal that was stapled to the page. And on this one, it's this crinkly paper that I added. On this one, it's the strip of the lace-covered burlap. Here, it's the beautiful fiber that Stacy sent to me. I'm going to be sharing a video about that soon, actually. Here, it is texture paste that was put down on the page, again, through this. And texture here is a flower that I just quickly sewed from a strip of cotton that I was using on the page, sometimes to cover up the faces so that I didn't get paint on them while I was moving to the next step. Of course, here is the corrugated cardboard. Here it's more texture paste, and I used the stencil with the gears on it, the really sort of steampunk stencil that I have, and I went back over the texture paste with some gold paint. Here, of course, it's the strip of upholstery fabric. On this page, the texture is the butterflies. That's the last layer. And, you know, some of these layers might feel like they overlap, like, you know, the ephemera for this one wasn't legitimate ephemera, but it was a piece of paper, a really nice piece of fancy paper that I tore into pieces and just made this shape of pieces to give it just another layer, basically. And that's my ephemera layer. The texture is the butterflies, but you know, it could have been butterflies stamped with a stamp and acrylic paint. And then be sure and wash your stamp. Or it could have been texture paste and a butterfly stencil. It could have been anything. And sometimes, you know, this is not a hard and fast rule for each letter. This is more an acronym and a series of layers to help you get back into a creative mood, or to use up supplies, or to build something up using, you know, one color palette. On this, the texture, again, is the flower petals. And then on the back, I considered my texture the birdsong stamp on a piece of paper, because here, and you can also flip-flop or like flip the steps. I put my ephemera down before I did the repeating level. So we have these circles for the repeating level. We have a piece of ephemera. The art is actually a heart that I painted with the white acrylic paint, and you can see that sticking out there. Then I cut out a piece of the paper kind of in the same shape and put that onto the paint when it was wet. And then I came back with gold paint to put an edging around that. So that was the art layer of all of this. And then the texture layer is the birdsong stamp. And one more little thing I wanted to do was grunge that up just the tiniest bit, because it just looks too stark white, and it'll make it feel more textured to have this. So let's get some of the water off of that. That'll dry, and that's going to be fine. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'm calling this, of course, Great Journal Pages. So the last part of all of this is journaling. You can see the pocket in the front here. I've got a piece of paper that's folded up. It says art. That's the journaling page here for right in the front. That might explain what the journal is. But on every single page, you could continue to add. You could glue a pocket on this page, or you could paperclip a page here, or you could add a piece of paper over the top, glue it down or tape it down. This is the basis for more journaling. You could continue to add more art journaling to this. And it is not, again, some hard and fast rule. I just like using this acronym for myself because it takes me through a series of steps and it makes me think every single time. This is not something that I brought a lot of art supplies to the desk for. I just pulled out several bottles of paint, started, working page by page, going through the steps. And then when I would get to the part of needing ephemera, I would just look through my stash and say, okay, I like this piece of paper, or I like this piece of ephemera. Go ahead and glue it down and just go through every step and don't overthink it. And I think you come out with something really pretty. One thing I love to use for journaling is Sharpies. So you can come back and add notes on top of what's already here, or you can type pages on your computer and print them out and then glue them down. You can do tiny, tiny areas of journaling, or again, just continue the art journaling. I really love her. I love the way she turned out. The way she got so grungy looking was that I went ahead and just drew a face on a separate piece of paper because this was definitely too much in the background. If you can just picture all of this blue and then the black, I knew that I didn't want to go through putting gesso down and all of that. So I took a separate piece of paper. And what pen did I use? It's not one of the R2s, and I'm kind of falling out of love with those anyway. I think it may have been this one. It might have just been a Pilot pen. But I did just a regular face like I do, put some paint for the cheeks and the lips. And then while, before I put it into the book, I took a wet paintbrush and just painted over the whole thing and let that ink run. Then I dried it off and then dry it with a hairdryer. So she ended up really grungy. And then I came back with the stencil to do the texture paste. I do like her. I will probably add more to this, or I may leave it just like it is and take it to work and put it on display. This might end up being one of the door prizes at the retreat that's coming up in April. I'm going to have some things there that I'm going to be giving away. And anyway, I'm really excited. That's getting closer and closer. Oh, and so I wanted to say one thing. My friend Jay really inspired me lately. She's been doing some of the poetry where you circle certain words on pages just to highlight certain words and to bring out sort of a sentence that wasn't really a sentence to start with. And the art step on this page was going back to this piece of ephemera and blocking out what I didn't want to show up. So this is called a prayer, and I have emotions, evidence everywhere, imaginative instincts of everyday, demonstrative, and shrine. And those are just the words on that page that kind of enveloped what I feel about praying. And anyway, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope this inspires you. I'm going to put the steps, where you can see them. Maybe I'll even pin this video so that you can remember these steps if you ever feel like you have a creative block and you want to start all over again making great journal pages. If you like this content, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell for notifications. It really helps channels when you do that. And thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.